I wasn't just seeing it, I was in it. And these channels of propagation, streaming energy, and I could see the different channels through which the energy was being propagated. Welcome back to Magic and the Noise. This week, we're going to be talking about a session both David and I worked as remote viewers on lightning.
Electrons then rapidly accelerate down the channel, causing extreme heating and the brightest flash at the event.
The target that Patrick tasked us with was the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio being struck by lightning. The moment that was captured on camera. One of the things that came out of this, David, you and Chris both had an extraordinary remote viewing moment where you both described the exact path of the lightning.
Yeah, to me, that's extremely abnormal. Up until that time, I had not seen anything like that before. It blew my mind at the time. We will get into more detail about the correlation between Chris and I later in the video. But for now, what I would like to do is to focus on your session, Sasha, because you pulled in an incredible amount of detail associated with the science of the lightning, which to me was like mind-blowing. So we're going to cover that first. It was pretty clear that you made contact with the target right from the beginning, because here you are describing the collision point where the lightning hit the head of the statue. You follow that up from the collision point. You now are describing high arcing energy that's coming from above, which provides additional details that, to me, clearly state you have contact with the lightning comprised of positive and negatively charged particles. It is initiated by the loss of an electron as part of that process. You end up with positive charged particles at one end of the cloud, let's say the top, and you have negative charged particles at the other end of the cloud, let's say the bottom. According to science, that's how the process starts to begin. And when we look at your session, I found it very interesting what you were describing here.
This one came through with exceptional clarity and vividness. I could really see this instantaneous, luminous motion of energy. I even wrote electron because the data came through so clearly. Right? I had luminous electrons glowing, streaming in a flow, and I could see them moving from here to here to here, but that there were these blank spots kind of that it was avoiding. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I did too. To me, it was very clearly on target with the actual breakdown of the science of how lightning works. So I found that to be fascinating. Then when we move on to your next image, you have even more details. And I found it interesting that you were describing the process through science by which the lightning creates a pathway. You basically have these ionization aspects that happen. And once you start to get less resistance, essentially, it creates like this path through the clouds of charged particles that allows for the actual transmission of the lightning to occur. And that process takes place with both the aspects of plasma and ionization are two of the key components in science that describe this process. So I saw at the top of your paper there that you had those elements along with describing the other aspects, and I found that to be interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you wrote down?
Yeah, so the concept of this fast motion, the plasma, the ions, were all coming through to me very clearly. And it was bizarre for me to write this down, but this sense of there not being any impedance, right? No resistance. And that's just weird to get that data and to have that come through. So I was kind of excited about that. And also, again, I wasn't seeing these individual particles moving. I was seeing them in a flow, in a material, I guess, or which is what I'm thinking now, in a field, right? And so it's the field itself they're moving through. And so that was kind of nice to see that there's that validity, I guess, to the data.
In this image here, you have a lot of detail, and you can in my mind, I can clearly see based on the rest of your session work that this is the lightning coming in and hitting the head of the statue again. And you're bringing in a lot of information that's associated with the science associated with that aspect. And you're talking about the lines of transmission, the fluidic energy, you've got propagation. Can you tell me more about what you were feeling from this information?
This is beautiful for me. This was this moment. I was experiencing the lightning. It was nearly a transcendent experience. Later in the video, we're going to talk a little bit about what contributed to that. But I wasn't just seeing it, I was in it. And these channels of propagation, streaming energy, and I could see the different channels through which the energy was being propagated.
These systems have horizontally layered charge regions that serve as the conduit for lightning to travel over 100 kilometers. Check out these massive horizontal flashes. They transfer huge amounts of charge and cause abrupt changes in the electric field. Almost all upward moving flashes are triggered by a nearby lightning flash, either when leader activity or a return stroke occurs close enough to the tall object, causing an abrupt change in the electric field.
And I could see that there were, again, these holes where the resistance was there, so the energy wasn't going there. It was finding the path of least resistance, and that's that zigzaggy kind of lightning effect. And at the same time, on this page, because I had been getting, the plasma, the ions, I wanted to try to get something a little bit moving back from the conceptual. And I intended to get a little bit more of a physical description, because I love getting lost in the conceptual data. And I have to remind myself, I should probably try to get some physical description.
Yeah, that's very good.
And so I had the hill, I had the down below, and that's where, rather than just describing these channels of propagation that were so amazing to experience, I did try to take a step back and say, okay, but then what does this look like? And I'm glad that I did that, because it did give me something that I think anyone can look at and say, yes, okay, I see that correspondence, right?
Yes. You did an amazing job, Sasha. I mean, it is incredible. The level of detail that you got out of that session, you don't see that too often. I'm just being honest. In other sessions that I see from other remote viewers, I mean, it's interesting because for science targets, I don't see a ton of them being done by remote viewers. So they're kind of uncommon, I would say, at least from what I've seen. And when you do see them, the level of detail in my mind is not to that which you just did. So congratulations on that. That's an amazing level of work for a blind target. I mean, you had no idea what that was. So that's just crazy to me. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But enough about me. Let's talk about you a little bit. Because what you and Chris did was just spectacular. So I wanted you to talk more about that.
Yeah, it was quite bizarre to me to be able to see two viewers get such precise information in terms of the pathing of the lightning. For me, I will freely admit that in my session, I saw a pipeline. I did not see lightning or energy, but the pathing clearly, when you line it up with the lightning, was correct and very precise. So I just had the context wrong, which happens with people who are still learning remote viewing. It's something that you strive to improve each time.
I think it happens even to the best remote viewers. Sometimes the context can be a bit off. I just found that mind-blowing when I saw that. I did some light analysis on the session after we were done. When I saw that pattern, I saw it in Chris's and I saw it in yours and I saw it in the image. At that point, I don't think I had realized that level of precision was possible with remote viewing. It's not often presented in public as being that precise or that we can do that.
Yeah, your analysis is what actually turned it up. So, I'm grateful that you were able to pick up on it. That's one of the the crazy things, right? You can have incredible data, and if you do not have good analysis, nobody will ever know that it ever happened.
Yes, and I wonder sometimes about that. I wonder about other people's sessions. How many people out there are collecting amazing data that the world would be interested in, but they don't know because they're just kind of glancing maybe quickly or just looking at the surface level, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that was a little bit different, I think, for all of us in this session is that you had boosted Chris. Can you say more?
The boost is when one person uses their consciousness to assist the remote viewer during the remote viewing process. On a simplified level, one part of it is to create a kind of shielding effect that improves data coherency, and the goal is for the remote viewer to essentially be able to collect better data, larger volume of data, essentially a higher level of detail.
And is that something that's hard to do?
The boost is complicated, but it's a learnable skill, just like remote viewing. One of the key takeaways for the remote viewing community is that I know you guys can take things much further than you have. In this particular session, what Chris told me, because he was boosted, was that he said he was compelled to draw this lightning path. And what he described was he's going through his normal methodology, and then all of a sudden he sees this pathway and he can't ignore it. And so he writes it down. And he even mentioned that it was like there was an after effect burn in his retina, like just temporarily for a few seconds. It's like when you see a lightning strike in real life, there's a moment when you can close your eyes and still see the image because it's so bright, right? He literally described experiencing the same kind of phenomenon, which in my mind is very much, in maybe a minor way, but it is by location. He clearly got the path of the lightning strike, as did I.
Like Chris, I have also done a boosted session with you. I also experienced extremely vivid visuals in a way that I don't normally experience. I'm a conceptual viewer. I see in my mind's eye conceptually. Very, very rarely do I see visually in my mind's eye. In my boosted session with you, where you boosted me, it was like watching a movie. It was incredible. The accuracy of the data, though, I found that is still reliant on my skill as a remote viewer. The richness of the detail that came through, and like you mentioned, the coherence was significantly different. I do wonder, because in this session I experienced the lightning, being in the lightning, having it around me, I wonder if there was a little bit of a resonance effect from you boosting Chris and me participating in that session, in my, doing my own session in that same tasking. I wonder if there was a little bit of resonance there that made the data come through for me with a little bit more coherence. What do you think about that?
The session you got boosted, the follow-on session was this lightning, and you had mentioned to me that you noticed a tendency of having kind of better data coherency on your follow-up session to a boosted session, meaning you got boosted and you get a result that's clearly abnormal, and then in the next session when I'm not boosting you, it's almost like you have this lingering effect.
So I've had a couple of boosted sessions, and yes, there was a lingering effect that I noticed in the subsequent session. And this lightning session I did after my second boosted session. One of the takeaways is, I think, other people out there who are remote viewers who have aphantasia. When people say, imagine the apple, you have the conceptual idea of the apple, you have the conceptual linkages, but you're not actually, there's no visual information. I think that the boost is quite an experience, because to be able to have visual data, it's quite interesting. We talked a little bit about, you mentioned that it's a form of shielding. Can you say more?
Yes, this is one part or piece of the boost itself. And whether people in the community believe it or not, you're in a harsh environment. Think of it that way. And there are different elements or aspects that are working against you to collect the data. When you talk about shielding, this is a way to start to protect yourself against that environment that you're in. And I know this particular piece of information for remote viewers won't maybe make a lot of sense, or they'll raise a lot of questions. When I talk about elements, I'm talking about a very broad set of circumstances and conditions which can actually work against an individual viewer being able to collect data. Whereas if you can create some protection barrier or just some space basically around you, you can alleviate some of that, and you will find that your remote viewing work will improve. So overall, I felt that everybody did an amazing job, great work. Really loved Patrick providing that particular target. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
I would definitely recommend people work with him if they can, because he's a great viewer and he's a great tasker as well.
And he's also very knowledgeable about remote viewing.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun. We had so much fun. I had so much fun sharing this information with you and sharing these results. It's always exciting to get nice data through a remote viewing session. But I do feel as though the system, to me at least, my little personal theory, is that it does want the information out into our reality. That's why it's providing it. And so it's exciting to be able to share it. So thank you for this opportunity, David. Thank you to the audience for listening and supporting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Welcome back to Magic in the Noise. This week we will talk about a...
It's a secret.
Hello and welcome back to Magic in the Noise. This time we will talk about a lightning strike session, which I thought was actually very interesting. That's it. Welcome back to Magic in the Noise. Wait, I lost it. Here we go. Right. Welcome back to Magic in the... Goodness sakes.
Sorry.
Welcome back to Magic in the Noise.
Let me get myself together.
Welcome back to Magic in the Noise. Sasha, what do we have this week? Wow.
For this session, Patrick Flanagan was our tasker. Patrick, some of you in the remote viewing community, most of you, I think, in the remote viewing community will know of Patrick. He's known as a very good tasker, and he's a good remote viewer. We had the delight of working with Patrick, both tasking and remote viewing with him. And so this is one of the sessions that came out of that work together.